If you've been struggling to focus lately, this is probably why. You sit down to do something important, and within minutes, your attention drifts. You check your phone, you switch tabs, you think about something else. And before you know it, you've lost momentum completely. So you assume the problem is discipline, that you need to try harder, focus more, be more productive. But that's not actually what's going on. The real problem is that your brain is overloaded because your attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. From the moment you wake up, something is competing for your focus. Notifications, messages, social media, information, noise. And even when you're not actively looking at your phone, your brain is still processing everything you've already taken in. It never fully switches off. And over time, that creates a kind of mental fatigue that most people don't even realize they're carrying. It doesn't feel like normal tiredness. It feels like restlessness, like your mind is always slightly distracted, like you can't fully settle into anything. And that's what makes focusing so difficult, because focus isn't just about effort, it's about mental space. And when your mind is full, there's no space left for deep attention. That's why even simple tasks can start to feel harder than they should. Not because they're difficult, but because your brain doesn't have the capacity to handle them properly. So it looks for something easier, something more stimulating, something that gives you a quick hit of relief. And that's usually your phone or scrolling or anything that lets you avoid the discomfort of trying to concentrate. But that relief is temporary because every time you give into distraction, you train your brain to expect it. You make it harder to focus the next time. And over time, that becomes your default. Short bursts of attention, constant switching, never fully locked in. And that's exhausting, not physically, mentally, because your brain is constantly starting and stopping without ever settling into a rhythm. That's why you can feel drained even if you haven't done much, because you haven't been able to focus long enough to make real progress. And without progress, everything starts to feel frustrating. You sit down to work, but nothing gets done. You try to concentrate, but your mind keeps drifting. And eventually you start to believe something is wrong with you, that you've lost your focus, that you're not as disciplined as you should be. But the truth is, your brain has just adapted to the environment you've put it in. An environment full of constant stimulation, constant input, constant distraction. And in that kind of environment, focus doesn't stand a chance because focus requires something most people don't have anymore: silence, space, and time without interruption. That's what allows your brain to settle, to slow down, to actually engage with what's in front of you. But if you never give it that, you can't expect it to perform at its best. So the solution isn't to push harder, it's to remove the things that are pulling your attention away, to create small pockets of time where your brain isn't being flooded with information. That might mean putting your phone in another room, turning off notifications, or simply sitting with nothing for a few minutes. At first, that will feel uncomfortable because your brain is used to constant stimulation. But over time, that discomfort fades and your ability to focus starts to come back. Not instantly, but gradually, because focus is something you rebuild by giving your brain the conditions it needs. And those conditions aren't more pressure. They're less noise, less distraction, less input. One of the biggest problems with focus today is how fragmented our attention has become. We're no longer used to doing one thing at a time. We're used to doing multiple things at once. Watching something while scrolling, working while checking notifications, switching between tasks every few minutes without even realizing it. And while that feels normal, it's actually training your brain to expect constant change, constant stimulation, constant novelty. So when you finally sit down to focus on one thing, your brain resists it because it's not getting the level of stimulation it's become used to. It feels slower, less interesting, almost uncomfortable. And that's why you feel the urge to check your phone or switch tasks or do something else. Not because you don't want to focus, but because your brain has been conditioned to avoid stillness. And the more you give in to that urge, the stronger that conditioning becomes, until focusing for even a short period of time starts to feel difficult. This is why a lot of people say their attention span is getting worse. But it's not that your brain is broken, it's that it's adapted. It's adapted to an environment where everything is fast, immediate, and constantly changing. So expecting yourself to suddenly sit still and focus for long periods of time without changing that environment is unrealistic. You're working against the way your brain has been trained, and that's why it feels like such a struggle. So if you've been struggling to focus lately, it's probably not because you've lost your discipline. It's because your brain hasn't had the space to focus.